Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. Well, hello, and welcome to actually an exceptionally amazing podcast today, because our guest today is going to touch on a topic that touches a lot of us, and she's going to help us to just navigate what recovery and healing is wrapped around when you have had a narcissistic encounter. But before we get started, Phoenix Gould, how are you today?
I'm really wonderful. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for taking the time out to, help us to understand more about this Get Trauma Informed movement. How you say you're good today? Ready to get going in this conversation?
I'm ready to get going. Although my voice might sound a little scratchy sometimes because I just recovered from a cold, but I'm well.
Okay, well, you sound beautiful. You sound beautiful.
Thank you.
We usually start our podcast off with this one question. What does Get Trauma Informed mean to you?
For me, I think it means to know what trauma means in someone's life, what kind of impact it can have, and also how we can heal from it.
Wonderful. Yes, how we can heal from it. Well, let me tell you all a little bit of background about our guest here today. Phoenix Gould, she is CTI and ICF certified coach. Okay, she has over 30 years of experience with her own healing journey, and she helps her clients to develop a core that cannot be shaken by circumstances. I think that is just absolutely huge. Is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, that's about it.
That's about it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's get into this topic. You have an extensive background. Help our people to understand, because when I first encountered personally myself, someone with narcissistic, I was in a relationship with a narcissist, and I had no idea. I was totally blindsided by this whole phenomenon. Can you explain to us a little bit about what is this? What is a narcissistic person or a narcissistic circumstance?
Right. Yes. I won't go into the clinical explanation because that's complicated and not really complex, not really complete anymore anyhow. So a narcissist is a person who has a different kind of brain, to where at the stage when empathy usually develops around the age 6 and 7, they haven't been able to go through that process through a prior trauma. And so their capacity to love is extremely limited. Their capacity to have empathy like we do is also very limited. Their empathy is different. When we see someone suffer, we feel for them. We know how that person is feeling, and we have that urge to not make them suffer anymore, right? Just to stop whatever we're doing so that they won't suffer. For narcissists, that is very different. They have a different kind of empathy, to where they can understand, and know how another person is feeling, but they don't feel compelled to stop what they're doing in order to stop that suffering for the other person. And so a narcissist is a person who has a very low self-esteem and is very much ashamed of who they are. And that feeling for them is so unbearable that they have developed at a very young age a kind of a coping mechanism that leads to, that loss of ability to love, the loss of ability to have empathy, to where they need other people's emotional reactions to feel empowered and powerful, and not feel those feelings of shame. And in order to feel powerful, they need to elicit emotional reactions in other people. And it doesn't matter to them whether that is, love and admiration, or whether that is hate, disgust, confusion, anger. And so essentially, all a narcissist does, for their whole life to keep those strong feelings of shame at bay is provoke other people. And they become great experts at manipulation, on how to manipulate other people to doing that. At the same time, they don't really see other people as a human being, more like, a toaster, a washing machine, like an appliance that is there to help them not feel bad.
That's a total different a different take or a different perspective. It gives us a little bit of a light into what it's like in their shoes. Because now, how do you utilize that to help someone that has been victimized by someone that is a narcissist? How do you do that? How do you bridge that?
Yes. Well, when we have been harmed by a narcissist, often there's that question in people's, like, why would they do such a thing? Like, I mean, I'm their partner, or I'm their child. Like, how could they? And this understanding helps people that it's never been personal. It's not personal. It's not about them. And also to understand how a mother who's supposed to love their children, or a father who's supposed to love their child, could do such a thing. Because for them, there isn't really another human being in the room. It's just more like a hammer or a toaster. And when we have a toaster that doesn't function, we just chuck it out and get a new one, right? We don't care about the toaster. We don't think, oh, poor toaster, I should be very nice to it. Right. Or, they will smack it on the side, turn it upside out and shake it. That's what happens in those relationships. But it's because the narcissist can't really see that there's a human being in front of them. So this is, one way of helping is to actually really understand, especially when people choose to still deal with the narcissist, or still be in the life of the narcissist, is that whatever's happening has nothing to do with me, is not personal, and they're just unable to. And at the same time, if you're still in a relationship with a narcissist and you start to understand that everything they have ever done and everything they will ever do is only to get what is called fuel, to still feel powerful and keep that mask up, to not feel that shame. So in that sense, we can start to understand that there isn't really a way to really relate to the narcissist. There isn't really a way to really have a normal conversation. And there isn't really any way to resolve any conflict, because what the narcissist's like is conflict. Because that will, when there's conflict, we will show the strongest emotion, which gives them the most fuel, which makes them feel the most in control and powerful, and keeps those awful feelings that they don't want to feel at bay. And so once we know that in a conversation with a narcissist, the only thing they want to do is trigger us, either in a positive way or a negative way, but it doesn't matter. Like, whatever works and whatever gives them the strongest emotional reaction from us. So then we can start to see that, we can't show the narcissist what they're doing. We can't expect them to change. We can't ask them to change. I'm not interested in solving any issue. I'm interested in creating them.
But then how do you self-care in that situation? How do you take care of yourself? Because what I'm hearing you say is that it's a constant ending need for more and more of those reactions from you, those reactions of conflict. So how do you take care of yourself and provide peace for yourself if you are in a narcissistic relationship, or even if you choose to stay in a narcissistic relationship?
Yes. I mean, usually when the narcissist causes such tremendous trauma and hurt and pain that most people just need to get out. Like, it is impossible to have a romantic relationship with a narcissist and be happy and healthy. Like, our brain changes when we are with a narcissist. And so we actually need to get away. We need to stop that relationship in order to take care of ourselves. And when we have, a relationship with a family member, the way to take care of ourselves is really to limit contact as much as possible, to just stay away, to sometimes go no contact, which is like a term that is really known to people in narcissistic relationships, which means complete break of a contact. No more seeing them, no more emailing, no more texting, no more phone calls. It's a complete break. Because our brain needs to recover, right? There's real changes, physical changes happening in the brain when we're with a narcissist, and that takes time to heal. And even after that, going back to a narcissist, they're going to have the same pattern. So if we want to be in a relationship with a narcissist, we need to understand really that there is no way to really have a relationship like with another normal being. There can't be any heart-to-heart connection. And once we've gone through healing, there is actually a possibility of being with them in some sort of contact, but very limited. And learning to not be drawn in to those conversations, learning how to not give them any emotional reactions, learning how to be very neutral, because then they hopefully, will stop trying to elicit so much emotional reaction from us. There's like an art to having a conversation with a narcissist, which, has to be learned so that we don't get hurt in the conversation. But really, there's so much deep healing that needs to take place before we are actually ready to be in the presence of a narcissist and not get hurt.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine driving down the road, enjoying a beautiful day, when suddenly a tree jumps out in front of your car. Crash! In an instant, your life is flipped upside down, both physically and psychologically. That was my reality. I'm Liz Blanding, a certified holistic wellness and trauma recovery coach. In a time when, according to the National Center for PTSD, the epidemic of trauma is on the rise, 70% of adults in the U.S. have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. That's 223.4 million people who could benefit from support on their journey to recovery. To address this, I launched the Get Trauma Informed podcast in March 2024. Our podcast offers free information, resources, expert advice, and stories of those who have overcome trauma and shifted from surviving to thriving. The podcast has the capacity to reach hundreds of thousands of people. I believe that by partnering with the Get Trauma Informed podcast, we can provide critical support to many more people who need it. Trauma was not their fault, but recovery is their responsibility. And with your support, we can help them to achieve it. Thank you for considering the partnership opportunity. I look forward to the possibility of working together to make a significant impact on trauma recovery. Email us at info@oasiswellnessctrs.com or contact us at 616-320-0703. Now we will return to our Get Trauma Informed conversation. Let's talk a little bit deeper about the brain change, because we've been talking about that in the recovery space and really understanding how trauma does affect you at a deep cellular level in your brain. And can you give a little bit of an explanation about what does that look like?
Sure. So, the part of the brain that is responsible for fight, flight, freeze, and for emotions grows and gets a lot bigger. So we become more and more sensitive to every little trigger. And the part of the brain that is logical, like the prefrontal cortex, is shrinking. And so we have a less capacity to figure out what is going on, to analyze, to make good choices.
Okay. So trauma shrinks that part. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, it does.
Oh, wow. Now, what about but is there in recovery though? What does that look like when you recover? Are you able to recover what you've lost in that trauma?
Yes, you are. It's possible to recover, but that really takes to be away from the narcissist. There cannot be, there cannot be much internet interaction, and the best and fastest way is actually to have no interaction at all, so that the brain, the nervous system, can start to calm down, because it's in constant alert. And once we reach, once we have more calmness, more peace, our body starts to adjust, and then the brain gets the message as well that, okay, there's no more threat. We don't need to constantly, look around every corner to see if there's, an attack coming. That part of the brain doesn't need to work so hard anymore. And then it can start to go back to normal. And that allows the prefrontal cortex also to expand again and grow, and more logic to come in. Yes, it's definitely possible.
That is so hopeful. I'm sure that, our audience that are listening can really, glean hope from that, knowing that it's not just damaged and that's it, but that you can recover. And that's why we're so heavy on self-care and providing yourself with that peaceful space and that place to journal and do all of the things that we need to do to recover. And so
Yes.
that's wonderful. Something that we didn't talk about was, what are the signs that I know something is wrong, but I'm not real sure what the situation is. How can we start to see or start to identify that, okay, this person is I'm in a narcissistic relationship. This person is a narcissist.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. And it's in a little bit a hard one to answer, because of course, we can't really diagnose a narcissist, because we're not trained in that sense. And the narcissist rarely gets diagnosed, because they don't see any point. They don't see a reason why they should go and seek help. The last ones that will seek help is a narcissist, because they feel that they're entitled to act the way they do. And so I think some telltale signs of a narcissist are like, it's different in a relationship with a mom or dad, or in a romantic relationship. But let's say in a romantic relationship, usually in the beginning of the relationship, everything is amazing and way better than you ever thought was possible. And it's called love bombing. This is where the narcissist, figures out who you are, what you like, what your self-doubts are, where you're not sure about yourself, and they will reassure you in all those areas. And the love bombing and that attention and that understanding and that taking care of you is so overwhelmingly amazing that it often feels like, oh my God, this person sees me for who I am, and they accept me fully. And it's almost like a soulmate, so that love bombing phase is really strong in the beginning. And it is designed to draw the other person in, to secure them and to make them theirs, And once that strong attachment to the narcissist has happened, the narcissist starts to start testing, how far then they can go in being nasty and being, criticizing you. And so after some time, usually like around half a year, the narcissist will start to, criticize you, and they figured out who you are so much that they can really now trigger the buttons, make you feel insecure, make you feel doubt yourself. And so that's a telltale sign that, after the initial amazing period, something shifts, and people were like, what happened? We're like, well, why? What am I doing wrong? What is it I have done to lose this? And so then, that is that first part. And then after that, in the narcissistic relationship, there's an alternation going on between the love bombing and between the criticism and showing the cold shoulder, just disappearing in what's called the silent treatment. So there's this constant back and forth between, giving the person relief of, oh, finally, something's good again. Oh, finally, we're back to where we were. And then a day later, or a week later, or, whatever that period of time is, it's bad again. And now everything I'm doing is wrong. Everything I'm thinking is wrong. I'm saying the wrong things. I'm being criticized for who I am, for what I feel. And so that's a really strong sign. A sign for, a family member that is like a mom or a dad is that when we have grown up either as what's called the golden child, where, we were being extremely spoiled, but we were also expected to pay complete attention to the narcissist. Like it's always about them, how they feel and how someone makes them feel. There's a strong focus on any narcissist on themselves. And a narcissistic child really often feels like they don't know who they are. They have no sense of self. They have no ability to say no, or very little ability to say no. And yeah, so I think, as a child of a narcissist, it's better to look at who are we, because we often walk away with the same kind of trauma to where we can't say no. We try to please people all the time, and we have a super high need to be accepted by other people, to get that approval from someone else. And there's a feeling like there's something wrong with us. We're not enough. A very low self-esteem. And
Wow.
Of course, sorry.
No. I'm just you've done such an amazing picture at such an amazing job at painting that picture. Because oftentimes we do look at ourselves and say, "What's wrong with me?" or "I'm doing this wrong," or going to that extreme people pleasing mode. So you've painted a fantastic picture for us to really, really understand, and that's a part of what the Get Trauma Informed movement is all about. It's about awareness. Definitely about awareness. That's amazing. I'm reading here from your bio, and one of the things that caught my eye is the relationship we need to have with ourselves in order to heal.
I'd love to talk about that. Yes.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Yes. You see, of course, my background is in helping people with narcissistic abuse. And so what for me is very clear is that once we have gone through that kind of abuse, the relationship we have ourselves is very critical, where we criticize how we feel and what we think. And so there's that really strong judge inside of ourselves that constantly puts us down, oh, damn it, why did I say this? I shouldn't have done that. And why can't I be spontaneous? And why don't I know what I want? We're very critical of ourselves, of course, because we're, suffering. And that also leads us to have more of those relationships that we already know, where someone can be critical and it doesn't throw up a red flag for us, because that's normal, right? And so if we can start to change the relationship with ourselves to one that is very empathetic, that is loving, that is understanding, forgiving, patient, that creates such a huge healing already, because the kind of relationship we have with ourselves will determine every single relationship we have with anyone around us, with our lovers, with friends, even with life. So if we can change to having a relationship with ourselves like that, which we always yearn for, right? What we want in that approval from others is that love, that understanding, that empathy. We want to be fully seen with all of our flaws and still be loved. Like we're yearning for that unconditional love.
Yes, that's so good.
And if we can give that to ourselves, that is a learning process for me, the very first step with my clients. And that goes through the whole, all of the healing, is that generating more and more empathy and love for ourselves, soften to ourselves, get to know ourselves, get really curious about ourselves rather than beating ourselves up. And I shouldn't do that. And just get curious. I was like, what was I feeling? I wonder why I was doing that. That's a very soft inquiry rather than a pounding on our own heads with a hammer in our hands.
Absolutely. You have such a peaceful countenance about yourself, even in your voice. They're soothing. And I think that's the prime example about being more gentle with ourselves, giving ourselves more grace. and just being, just sometimes being. I think, part of, and I've shared my story, on throughout the podcast, but part of that is, trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And like you said before, living in that trauma response of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, always living in that, never giving myself the time. And I've learned that through, I've learned it through my coaching experiences, coaching and being coached. It's just a great place to be in that recovery. But I also warn people that once you hit that recovery, there is still work to be done so that you can maintain your recovery.
Yes. Kind of is like a never-ending journey, For me, it's been like 30 years and I still discover more and more layers that are deeper than, I thought I'd healed something. Yes. And then all of a sudden I see a new layer, but it just gets exciting, because everything we heal gives us more freedom.
That's so true. Say that again. I love that. So we can just sit in that for a minute.
Sure. My experience with myself and also with my clients is that once we enter the healing process, at first, of course, there's fear of all these things that we need to see and realize, and it can be sort of terrifying. But the truth is, once we've seen something, terrifying, there's already some healing there. And it becomes more and more interesting as we go onto the healing journey. We start to understand that everything we see, no matter how hard it is, every little bit we're able to change just expands us and gives us more air to breathe and more freedom, so that, eventually, for everyone that I know that has gone through, a deep healing journey, they don't want to stop, because they know every single little thing that they see just gives them more of that expansion and more of that freedom. It's irresistible.
It is. It is. Now, how has trauma empowered and inspired you? I think you kind of sprinkled it throughout, but how has it empowered and inspired you?
I love that question. It's the first time anyone's ever asked me this one. So how has it inspired and what did you say?
Empowered and inspired you.
Oof. Wow. Well, I think it's the healing of the trauma that is so inspiring and empowering. It's so inspiring because I can see how far we can go. How the capacity of us to heal is limitless. And it's inspiring me to pass on that message and say, I never thought I'd be where I am right now. Like not even 1% of where I am right now, I thought was possible. And as we heal, we actually become so much more aware of our life and of who we are, that actually we can live even deeper lives than someone who has not been traumatized. Because
I'm very expressive, and for those that are listening to us versus the actual visual podcast, I am so expressive. So as Phoenix is talking, I'm experiencing that sense of peace, that sense of grace, that sense of wow, we can paradigm shift, turning our trauma into triumph, into victory, into having that be a launching pad into us going into a greater depth of purpose. So I'm pulling you're the essence of our tagline that trauma was not your fault. However, recovery is your responsibility, and you're embracing that responsibility and taking it to another whole different dimension. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for summing it up so beautifully. So yeah, I think someone who has a fairly normal life, and they have developed that strong core and that self-confidence, they just move on with their life. But sometimes they can get very focused on, things like making money, kind of building that world around them that is kind of external. And when we had trauma, we kind of really need to turn inside. And so we get to know this being that we are in this life, to such a strong extent that others really don't get to know themselves because they haven't been forced to. We need to, otherwise, of course, we wouldn't either, but we get to know our being, each corner of our feelings and thoughts and needs and wants and wishes and what's important, what's not important. We get to be a witness to that journey of building our own core, building our own being, deciding who we want to be, with the materials we've got, with our personality. And so we get to be incredibly conscious about ourselves, about life, what life means to us, about relationships, and about what we want in life. That like, I wouldn't, like, now, if you ask me after all these years of healing, would I trade not having had the trauma to having had a normal life? I would yell out no. Because
right.
where I am now so makes up for everything that I've experienced before. I would not want to trade the awareness I have and the drive I have and the purpose I feel in life and the depth I feel in every moment for anything in the world.
My goodness, you answered the question too. I've heard some of my clients say, I'm upset because I know I could have been greater, or had it not been for the trauma, who would I be? And you just flipped that thing and said, you know what? But look at it in this way. Paradigm shifted into, you are becoming such an amazing, empowered person, because the layers of depth, like you're going deep inside, and now you're pulling out that every essence of who you were designed and purposed to be. Whereas before, you may not have even gotten the opportunity to look there because our focus would have been on something else. So that was just amazing. And that really takes us into, what would you say to someone faced with trauma?
I would say first, I'm really sorry that you had to experience this. It is very hard for someone else who hasn't gone through that trauma to really, truly understand the pain that you're in. And so if other people don't understand, just recognize that they can't, and find people who can. Because what you need is someone who can validate what you've gone through. That's the first thing. And acknowledge how hard it is. And after that, know that there are many ways to healing. And if you don't know how, get help. Get someone who's gone through the healing and who can point you in the right direction. And know that what you feel right now doesn't have to stay the same. It can completely change to tremendous joy and happiness in your life.
That is so amazing. As we're wrapping up today, is there anything that you want to just drop in our listeners' ear? And if they wanted to get back in contact with you, how would they be able to do that?
Sure. Yes, there is one thing I would love to mention, and it is what I call radical self-love, because we know we need to change the relationship we have with ourselves, but we don't know how. And so I've developed a tool that makes it super easy, no matter what we feel, no matter what we think, to practice that radical self-love. And I have a recording of it that, if possible, we could share. I don't know if it's possible to share in your show notes so that people can use it. It's a meditation, an audio meditation that I've created that allows the listener to actually experience self-love, radical self-love in that moment. And how if people would love to work with me, they can get in contact with me through WhatsApp. That's the fastest. I'll respond the same day. Should I share the number now?
Absolutely, please share.
Okay, so it's +1 for Canada, and then the number is 780. I'm sorry, I have to say it again. 780-268-9888. And I can also be reached through email at phoenix@phoenixcore.ca.
We'll share that information also in the show notes or description at the conclusion of this podcast. This has been such an amazing experience. You have actually relaxed me, and like I said, we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I definitely want to share your audio meditation because that radical self-love just touched me in a special way. Radical self-love, because oftentimes we're ashamed or, it's about everybody else, but it's okay. And sometimes we need that permission to even to give ourselves permission. It's okay to love yourself, right? It's okay to fill your cup and give from your saucer. Got that from Lisa Nichols. She talked about that. When you give from your cup, you're depleting yourself. But when you give from the overflow in your saucer, that's the piece right there.
I love that.
Well, Phoenix, I have so enjoyed you today, and I know you just relaxed our people, so much, when they get opportunity to listen. And just to let everybody know, we are also found on the Soul Emporium Radio, WJBJ. They just came on as one of our amazing, incredible sponsors. We can be heard on the radio Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays. Look forward to seeing you all over there in Phoenix again. Most grateful to have you here with us today. And I look forward to all the amazing things that you're doing in the world as well.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye for now, everybody. It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you were collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.